You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and kick us off.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce you to Dr. Andrew Jones. We're going to talk about monetization of the videos. Andrew is the president of Four Paws Online. He holds a degree of DVM from the University of Saskatchewan, has a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture Animal Sciences from University of British Columbia, author of Veterinary Secrets, Natural Health for Dogs and Cats. And on the personal side of things, he was inspired to start a veterinary career by the works of James Herriot. He's also a youth soccer coach. Andrew, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Well, thank you, Ivan. Thanks, Shawn. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to be talking to some real people.
Well, real people, but still virtually.
All right.
So with that video, I'm super excited to hear your story because I've used videos a lot. It's something that kind of, with the YouTube and everything that kind of allowed this opportunity to leverage it for people that can't film professionally, but they can deploy anything you want. So it helped me with my previous startup to leverage videos and everything what I do. So tell us the story. How did you get into video and how did you monetize it and how did you combine it with your veterinary career?
What I first started with, and this is while I was practicing as a veterinarian, is working 6 or 7 days a week. I live in a small community, own the practice. I did have two other veterinarians working for me. We didn't have a big area. We don't have an emergency veterinary clinic. So there's as probably the similar concerns you've heard from many veterinarians, right? You're working lots of hours, not a lot of free time. And like, maybe there's got to be another way where I can just, give myself a little bit more free time if I only had a little bit of passive income. So I started out and I had a fairly big interest at the time in natural remedies. So I wrote myself this book, an ebook of really was home remedies for dogs and cats. And I started out, I did a fair amount of research and a lot of the stuff I had learned, a lot of my just own interest. And I put this book on the internet thinking, there it is, there's going to be my big ticket to passive income. I published this page thinking all this traffic is going to show in. And I think it must have gone for the first week before if there was even any interest. I think it took about a month to have one sale. Right. So there was my sort of exposure into, okay, I think I have to learn a little bit about marketing. I probably spent close to a year on this book and I had all this, what I thought was great content. It's really useful information. But if you don't have anybody watching it, you're sure not going to have anybody buying it. So that's sort of from there went down, eventually down the path through online video.
So how did that develop further?
So what happened is I started out with this book and then I had to learn about online marketing. That added into, then I started into a blog that seemed to be what everybody was doing at the time, right? So I started to write about an article once a week on something related to my book. Maybe it's about dog allergies and some of the alternative to dog allergies or something similar. I mean, the book itself covered just an array of the more common dog and cat health conditions. And at the time, there was a moderate interest, but I still wasn't necessarily getting the traction I was hoping. There just wasn't as many people seeing it or being exposed to it. And in there, I started to expand this related online business. So I developed a dog and a cat supplement at the time as well. So I had this sort of proprietary dog supplement, a cat supplement, kind of a complete supplement. Some of the ingredients are unique, but regardless, it was still meant to like, okay, how are we going to market this at the same time? And with YouTube, there was this huge, this massive group of people watching it. Not many veterinarians or many pet related people on these veterinary wise on YouTube. And it was kind of maybe this is another medium to try. And I had no experience on video. So I was just, very awkward videos at the time. And I had this, dark little room and this little camcorder off to one side. After watching enough YouTube videos, I thought, okay, I'm just going to record there were 5-minute videos. I learned a little bit about video editing and it was just about some simple thing, right? So here's how to examine your dog and find where the lymph nodes are. Or if you think your cat is scratching and here's a better way to examine your cat. And I would go through some of these different array of different videos, suggestions. Many of them came just from some of the people that actually had followed me. And it's one of the good things, if you're a veterinarian online, you get lots of questions. So one of the big, for many people that are trying to market anything online is, what do you talk about? Veterinary wise, and I'm sure many veterinarians are going to attest, doesn't matter where they are. I mean, you go to the grocery store and people approach you and they have questions about their dogs, their cats. So I had lots of potential content. So it's easy for me to create stuff because it's based on what am I most frequently being asked. So I started these once a week videos. And honestly, I think I started a YouTube channel. I might have had 100 subscribers. And my goal at the time is if I could just stick with it, just publish one video a week, and I'm going to give it 6 months and see, is there going to be, and it seemed to be in about 4 months. I'm not sure what I did. I think I did a video on pet food that was a big demand, a fairly big interest, and that all of a sudden in the world of Google and YouTube, somehow that got traction. And then they, based on their algorithms, so then they then show it to other people looking for something similar. And that then all of a sudden I started to see an increase in viewers and then an increase in subscribers.
That's amazing. So, it's such a typical story for any startup or entrepreneur where you have your idea and you think as soon as I build it, there's going to be a lineup.
Yeah.
And I was told this story when I was in partially in the incubator when we built SmartFlow, my previous startup. And I was told that, but I said, no, this is different with this thing because many veterinarians need this treatment sheet on the iPad. So, they will line up and they will be there. So it's such a common story. As an example, Shawn built his new business Talkatoo and still doesn't have any customers. So a year later, so that's very similar.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Even Andrew is the customer, so we'll do a plug for you, Shawn. So Andrew, you said you're using Talkatoo, are you?
I am. It's great. So because Shawn had originally reached out to me earlier in the summer about arranging me to be on the podcast and talked about the software he has, this Talkatoo, the speech recognition software for veterinarians. So one of my very big time-consuming things in being part of YouTube is responding to the comments. It's a big mark is just how engaged you are. Also, it's really good feedback along with suggestions. And I've never learned to type. Well, it's other skills, but I just for whatever reason, and that's what comments are. You're responding via typing. So I'm like, okay. So I've been using, which is great because now all of a sudden I can just speak and I just correct a few things and I've responded. Yeah. So I would definitely endorse it.
The secret behind it is that Shawn can't type or spell for the life of his. So really the background. And I've been watching it live when we had a trip to Ukraine together last year, and that's I guess the goal of his life is to try to spell and type. But you touched on one thing that is I'm very familiar with. When you start recording one or two first videos, and then you hear and see yourself, and it's super awkward. How do you overcome that? How do you become, for those that want to start video blog or any sort of, marketing through YouTube and starting a channel, how do you overcome that? How do you become more comfortable with it? And what was your path?
So I spent, like many people are starting on YouTube, I spent lots of time watching an array of different YouTube channels and seeing these really polished videos. I'm like, with very high-end video equipment. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I can't hire a production team. So my big path was just do it super awkwardly, and especially awkward in front of the camera. And it's really surprising when you look at the camera how you freeze up and it is. So, but I'm like, okay, fine. And then I would just edit it down. I learned some basic video editing skills, just enough, and it was some simple video editor, just enough to get a video out. And then I press publish. And I also took a bit of comfort at the time, though, when you start searching on YouTube and seeing who are some of these big, large YouTube creators. For instance, there's one of these YouTube creators, one of the largest ones in the world. He's a Brazilian. He has over 10 million YouTube subscribers. His camera is a GoPro, and that's it. But he's very engaging on camera, and I think it's around current events and entertainment, not really applicable to what I'm doing. But I thought, well, if someone like that can have that much of an audience with a GoPro, here I've got the Panasonic camcorder. I'm already up the quality.
There you go.
Right. So okay, and they're fairly rough videos early on. And I think after, I don't know when it just happened, but you start to get a little bit more comfortable just by doing it. Honestly, it was just by doing it and just staring in the camera more often. And pretty soon, you're editing yourself, but you get a sense after going through the video after, okay, that's where I look. That's where it looks like more engaging. I'm looking at the camera, not looking down, not looking to the side. And I figured out maybe it helps if I have a bit of light so you can actually see my face. The next thing was, instead of just using the audio on the camera, like, oh, look, like you could actually get a microphone, which none of that was especially expensive, but that made probably the biggest difference is getting quality audio was huge. So more, and I didn't realize that. And part of that came from just some of the different YouTube or video seminars where when they talk about, they'll actually show 2 videos as an example, even just from some of the film school instructors, and they'll show you, here's a video with great video quality but poor audio versus okay video quality but great audio. And every time they perceive the audio is far more important than the video quality. I'm like, okay, because if you can't hear it, you can't understand it. Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that at the time. I always thought it's about the video and the quality. No. So some of those changes, a little bit better lighting, much better audio. And then by just redoing it again and again and again, eventually became more comfortable because I'm not natural in the camera.
It's so amazing. It's so amazing to hear you say that. And I think anybody that's out there listening, whether they're in practice or any other area, I think that's the thing. It's the consistency. And it's also just those little tweaks along the way. And I mean, we've gone on that journey, with podcasting and the tools and equipment that we use and, trying to ratchet up the audio. But I think, Andrew, your story is just so incredible. I mean, you've got close to 400,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. Some of your videos have 2 million plus views. And all out of just this idea that you just started, kind of out of nowheres. And the thing that I think is so incredible, and I'd like you to talk to our audience specifically about this, is you're a vet,
right?
But you're not practicing anymore.
Correct.
And you've turned this YouTube channel into your primary source of income. This is all you do.
It is correct. That's all I do. You're right.
Yeah. So dive into that a little bit, because I mean, there's a lot of veterinarians, and we hear this all the time, that are in the profession that think that they're a vet and that's all that they can do. So you've done something incredible, and I'd like you to kind of illustrate that.
And in that story, how do you jump from vet to I'm doing this full time? Because that's a decision point that is hard.
With me, obviously, so it started as a book, just a little simple ebook, Home Remedies, Dr. Jones's Book of Home Remedies for, honestly, that was the first title. Dr. Jones's Book of Home Remedies for Dogs and Cats, that I thought, wow, it's a great book. It's a great title. No one was interested until I threw in the word veterinary secrets, hence the name change, right? That became just the marketing of the title alone became much more. All of a sudden, all these pet parents are far more interested when they saw the word secrets. Okay. So that's part of that is online learning, just basic online marketing. But then after that, making the jump was, okay, well, I've got this little simple book. It made a little bit of money. I slowly learned about marketing. But just seeing the potential that I had an associate in, someone who was interested in buying the practice, like, okay, well, that's great. And I'm more than happy now to make the transition and leave, but I wasn't in a position to, be retired, right? So I have kids going to university, and as you know, kids are also expensive, never mind living. So I needed other sources of income just to maintain my lifestyle and be able to sort of go into that next phase. So it meant, okay, well, I've got this little book. What else? And I had a small market of people buying it. So I've got this online group of people. As part of initially learning how to market online, I next started with a newsletter. So it meant learning just sort of the basic of email and email marketing, where when I had a website and I had, a page that was selling this book, what I was asking people is I had written then a small part of this book. So I kind of gave it a condensed version, and I would have a piece of drop-down software on my website saying, if you're interested in this free version of the book, I'd just like to get your name and email address. So I collected a list of names, and that was sort of the initial basis of it, where I started this small email list. And once or twice a week, I was sending out this free email newsletter, building this relationship with this list of people. And that was sort of the basis of it. Then what YouTube allowed me to do is just this huge, just explode the audience in that much bigger way. So I was just exposed to so many more people, and many of those same people are now separately also on my email list. And when you get, say, a potential client, so you get a subscriber who then joins your list, they develop a much bigger, stronger relationship with you. So then when I then developed a dog supplement. All of a sudden, most of the people that purchased the dog supplement came from the email list. Then a cat supplement, the same thing. Most of those people came from the email list. So now that's what allowed me to go from, a little ebook that was maybe making $500 a month in sales to actually being able to, quote unquote, retire from working as a full-time veterinarian.
That's totally awesome. So the next follow-on question is, what's it like to be a bit of a YouTube star?
I don't feel like a YouTube star. It's the funniest thing, right? Because you're in, like, supposedly you're a YouTube star, but you're just in the little digital world. And it's funny, there's like few people I'll go downtown, oh, you're Dr. Jones. But the most part, I live in a small community and they know me from, Andrew Jones, the vet, and they kind of wave at me. So in the whole digital world, you don't really get the same feedback. It's not as if you're some celebrity who's, walking down the streets of LA and you get recognized. No.
That's
Maybe
cool.
in my own little mind, I'm a YouTube star, but I don't feel it.
Well, it's really interesting for me and Ivan. Like, we've had people come up to us at conferences and they're like, oh, you host this podcast. And it's just such a funny feeling because, that we do it because we love doing it. It's fun for us to have these conversations. But like, it just blows my mind to think of like, producing a video and have 2 million people watch it. Like, the comments alone must be just really interesting. I guess another follow-on question is, what's the funniest thing that's happened, or what's the weirdest comment, or tell us some of the zany stuff that you've experienced through your channel.
Because you probably read and there's some stuff that is not very pleasant. What is like the rudest thing that people wrote to you?
Okay, you have every range. See, that's the whole issue with comments, right? So you have every range of comment, you name it, from right, yes. Most of the stuff would be non-repeatable. I'm surprised the number of people that have their own questions about themselves. Like, well, I've got this. Like, what do you? So they want me to solve, and that's you need to go see your physician, right? Then I've had like more than a few. I mean, I'm married, children. I have more than a few marriage proposals.
Well, that's awesome.
Yes, YouTube.
That reminds. I have to tell you the story that when I was in vet school, so I went to PI, and this guy came in, and I was working. I was in the second year, and I was working in reception of the teaching hospital downstairs. And this, was it a guy or a lady? I think it was a lady that she came in with a Ziploc bag, slapped a huge worm of some sort in the Ziploc bag on the front counter and said, I got this and I need to find out if it's from my dog.
Okay. Yeah.
Terrible. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
And you also get, because there's such a big global audience, like for instance, YouTube lets you look into all these analytics over who's your audience. About 60% are from the United States. Second is the UK. Third is India. Fourth is the Philippines. Right? I mean, Canada is like sort of the fifth big audience. You've got this worldwide audience, and then the questions are so different, right? Based on that, over what's available in the Philippines or what's available in India. The other good thing is I get exposed to all these different questions, and some of these really, these tropical dog or cat diseases that I've never been aware of, right? Never mind, just the whole culture, right, of being very different.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so neat. So it's really interesting because I kind of feel like you could put a course on for all of these people, including me and Ivan. We could learn so much from you. And it's been a really fun conversation. I'm glad that we finally got a chance to do it, Andrew, but we're at time. It always happens every week. And so we like to wrap up the same way every week. So the first question towards our wrap up would be, what's something that's inspired you to do what you're doing? Something you read, something you've watched, something that you think other people should check out that you'd recommend to our listeners.
So one of the first ones, like Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was like, okay, because here I am working in veterinary practice. You're doing a zillion different things, not necessarily being effective. So that really helped me kind of make sense of what am I doing? What do I want to end up doing? Part of his mantra was, start with the end in mind. Like, okay, if this isn't really how you want things to go, maybe think out how differently could it go and what else do you want to leave with the world. That really helped. Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which I'm sure you guys are obviously aware of. That, I mean, I think that's just a really good read and a good sense of, obviously he works more than 4 hours. He's got a great podcast as well too. But it's a really good sort of book to get into, or foundation to get into if you are interested in online business. And I use some of that and online marketing along with what is, potential and available. And I think the other couple other things I suggest is I'll watch now, that especially because most of my business, all the new clients. The other thing I forgot to add is we don't actually. So I have this online business, but none of them, I don't spend any money on marketing as far as any form of advertising. All these new clients come from this, quote unquote, these videos which are free. So they're all, which is great. It's a great way to be able to. So I don't imagine not having to do any advertising. You get all these clients. So it's a really good way to be able to run a profitable business. But is watching some of what I think are some of these really good, successful YouTube channels or YouTube content creators. So there's one content creator called Peter McKinnon. He's from Toronto, who his channel is not about, maybe business, but just to see, he was a relatively small creator 2 or 3 years ago. He now has 5 million subscribers. Just a good example of a lot of how-to stuff, right? How to start with basic editing, how to tell a good story in video, and how to make an effective video. So I'm kind of watching, especially for a lot of the how-to stuff. And there's another YouTube creator who's actually from Vancouver called Lenarduzzi, whose actually father was Bobby Lenarduzzi. He was a big Canadian soccer star. But her stuff is very much about marketing and online marketing and how she uses her platform on YouTube, but it's much more thoughtful in terms of directed at selling a course that she has. So she's not just using YouTube for the sake of entertainment and celebrity. It's all about using YouTube for like all these different, she's trying to teach obviously marketing, but ultimately sell her course. And, once again, there's example of a couple people that is their full-time income, and it's all based on the power of what they're getting through YouTube and all these subscribers.
Sounds like a university degree right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
For
and
sure.
then the last question that we ask is, who do you know or think we could invite to this podcast from the industry as well?
That's another good question. Is I thought, what would be good to do? So one person I've been following, who I'm connected with on LinkedIn, is Matt Meeker, who founded BarkBox, which is, so this is this massive dog all subscription service based in New York. I just looked on there last year. They had over $50 million in sales, and it's all start with the premise of once a month you get this little box of goodies sent to your house in the mail for your dog. And they've obviously expanded it from there. I think the company is called Bark. But it's just so interesting that you can, who could imagine, right? That you'd have that many people wanting to spend that much just to have, you can imagine that. Why didn't I think of that? Right? Right. That's brilliant, right? And people want to pay more for it. So I thought he'd be super interesting to talk to.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinarynnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.